At 37 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré is rewriting Africa's economic playbook. Leader of Burkina Faso and one of the youngest heads of state on earth, he is determined to break free from the U.S. dollar's grip on global trade. His ally in this mission is unexpected. China. Beijing has just launched the most ambitious economic plan in its history, a blueprint to make Africa the first global hub for its new cross-border payment system. The goal is clear: boost the Chinese yuan, bypass the dollar, and rewrite the rules of international commerce. Last month, China achieved what no nation has done before. 53 out of 54 African countries signed onto a new trade framework. Their exports will enter China tariff-free. Their markets will open to over 1 billion consumers. And at the heart of this continental shift stands Traoré's Burkina Faso. For Traoré, this is about more than selling coffee or minerals. It's about building a financial system where African nations no longer have to beg for US dollars to trade. For decades, the dollar has ruled along with the costs, sanctions, and vulnerabilities it brings. If a nation displeased Washington, its banks could be cut off, its reserves frozen overnight, its lifelines severed. China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, offers another path: direct trade in yuan, skipping the dollar entirely. Fewer fees, fewer risks. No Western gatekeepers. Traoré is pushing hard for Burkina Faso to join. Since seizing power in 2022, Traoré has become a rallying figure for Africans tired of foreign control. Inspired by the revolutionary Thomas Sankara, he has nationalized gold mines, built a national gold refinery, and insisted that his country's wealth remain within its borders. His speeches are blunt. If your economy depends on someone else's currency, it is not your economy. In private, he warns that the dollar system is a quiet form of colonialism, one enforced not by armies, but by bankers. Western leaders see his alignment with Beijing as risky. But for Traoré, it is a calculated move in a larger game. The U.S., especially under America First policies, has sidelined Africa, offering no serious trade deals, only tariffs and lectures. China, meanwhile, is building railways, opening markets, and offering a way to trade that cuts Washington out of the equation entirely. The rivalry between the world's two largest economies has turned Africa into the new battleground for influence. But in Traoré's eyes, this is not about choosing sides, it's about choosing freedom. We are not a chessboard for others to play on, he says. We are a player in our own right. For years, the rules of global trade have tilted against Africa. Washington sets the terms. Africa pays the price. Tariffs as high as 30% on South African exports and 50% on Lesotho's have made it harder for African nations to compete. And when aid comes from the U.S., it often carries conditions: political changes, policy shifts, alignment with Western interests. China plays a different game. It offers open markets, infrastructure investment, and now something far more disruptive: a new financial system. The problem begins with SWIFT, the Western-controlled network that processes international payments. It runs almost all global trade, and it runs through the U.S. and Europe. If an African company wants to sell to Europe, it can't simply use its own currency. The payment must first be converted into dollars, then euros. 2 exchanges, 2 sets of fees, days of delays, and total dependence on Western banks. But the real danger is political. SWIFT can be WEAPONIZED. In 22, when Russia entered the war in Ukraine, the West froze $300 billion of Russian reserves overnight. Across Africa, the message was clear: if it can happen to Moscow, it can happen to anyone. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has no intention of letting that happen to Burkina Faso. His answer: China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, a direct competitor to SWIFT. CIPS does the same job, but without the dollar. It processes trade in yuan, cuts fees, and keeps transactions outside Western control. Over 4,900 banks in 187 countries are already connected. African nations are signing on fast. In June, South Africa's Standard Bank became the first on the continent to offer direct yuan transactions with China. No dollars, no SWIFT. Traoré wants Burkina Faso to follow, calling it a shield against sanctions and trade blockades. China's appeal, he says, is not just economic, it's philosophical. Beijing does not lecture African leaders, dictate political changes, or treat the continent as a warehouse for raw materials. Instead, it invests in roads, schools, and hospitals. It gives duty-free access to goods from 33 of Africa's poorest nations, including Burkina Faso. For Traoré, that's the kind of partnership that builds real independence. This is not a small shift. It is a continental pivot. China's new trade framework now includes 53 African countries, granting them tariff-free access to the world's second-largest economy. For Burkina Faso, that means more buyers for its gold, cocoa, and agricultural exports and fewer barriers standing in the way. Other nations are already making the leap. Egypt and China now trade directly in yuan. Nigeria signed a $15 billion yuan swap deal, bypassing the dollar entirely. Angola and South Africa are on the same path. This movement fits into a larger strategy. BRICS, the bloc Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa wants a world where the US dollar is no longer the single dominant currency. South Africa and Egypt are leading Africa's shift toward yuan-based trade. Ethiopia and Uganda are following. Algeria and Nigeria, two of Africa's largest economies, have been invited to join. If they accept, BRICS would include Africa's top 4 economies. The continent's voice in global finance would grow louder than ever. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré intends to make sure it is heard. Captain Ibrahim Traoré sees BRICS as more than a trade alliance. It's a counterweight to Western dominance, a blueprint for a fairer global system. Burkina Faso, he believes, must strengthen its ties to the bloc if Africa is to chart its own course. Where the West once dug deep into Africa's oil fields and diamond mines, China is building something else entirely, partnerships based on African priorities. Billions have flowed into roads, ports, and railways across the continent. In Burkina Faso, Chinese teams are raising new schools and hospitals, creating jobs and improving lives. Traoré calls this the key difference. They listen to our leaders, and they work with our plans. That cooperation runs through the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, which aligns directly with the African Union's Agenda 2063, a vision to turn Africa into a global powerhouse within a generation. In Angola, the model is already in motion. The nation's economy runs on oil, half its GDP and 90% of its exports. But the world is moving away from fossil fuels, and Angola risks being left behind. China is helping it pivot. A $350 million agriculture investment is underway, led by Chinese firm CITIC, which is spending $250 million to develop 100,000 acres of farmland for soybeans and corn. A seed research center is being built to boost yields and resilience. Traoré sees this as a template for Burkina Faso, where farming is central to survival and growth. He's exploring similar deals to expand agriculture, cut food imports, and give the country's youth a future in productive work. While China builds bridges, Washington has been pulling back. Under Donald Trump's America First policy, the U.S. raised tariffs, cut foreign aid, and shut down diplomatic posts in Africa. South Africa faced 30% tariffs. Lesotho, 50%, crippling their ability to sell abroad. To Traoré, It's proof the U.S. isn't serious about Africa's growth. The contrast is stark. Where the U.S. raises barriers, China opens markets and invests in infrastructure. That shift in perception runs deeper than economics. Across the continent, many see the West, especially the U.S., as an unequal partner, quick to demand political concessions, slow to offer tangible support. Washington's backing of controversial policies, like Israel's actions in Gaza, has further strained its image. Traoré has been blunt. The West uses aid as leverage. China invests without strings attached. His push for yuan-based trade and CIPS is catching fire across Africa. From Burkina Faso to Nigeria, nations are warming to a partner that respects sovereignty. But Traoré's vision is larger than trade agreements. He wants Africa to feed itself, process its own raw materials, and hold on to its wealth. In Burkina Faso, he has already nationalized gold mines, ensuring profits stay at home. Chinese cooperation is helping build factories and train skilled workers, laying the foundation for an economy driven by Africans. For Africans, the message resonates with a continent where over 60% of the population is under 25. Traoré, just 37 himself, speaks their language, urging young people to step into agriculture, technology, and global trade. China's training programs, new schools, and infrastructure projects are giving them the tools to do it. To Traoré, youth are the key to Africa's rise. To China, they are the foundation of a new alliance. And together, they are shaping a future where Africa stands not as a resource for others, but as a power in its own right. Captain Ibrahim Traoré is betting on the next generation. The age of the U.S. dollar is waning, and he wants Africa ready before the old system collapses. For decades, the dollar's dominance gave Washington unmatched leverage. The United States can print endless green bills, exporting inflation to the rest of the world and quietly eroding the value of money held abroad. For Africa, locked into dollar-based trade, this is dangerous. A single decision in Washington can ripple through African economies overnight. Traoré or Acute warns, depending on the dollar is depending on a weapon you do not control. Alternatives are rising: gold, Bitcoin, and, most prominently, the Chinese yuan. Backed by Beijing's influence and leaders like Traoré, a new financial order is forming. The tool at the heart of it, CIPS, China's answer to SWIFT. By trading directly in yuan, African nations can bypass Western banks, avoid sanctions, and keep their financial lifelines out of Washington's reach. Traoré calls it the cornerstone of Africa's economic freedom and long-term stability. And this shift isn't just about currencies. It's about the digital frontier. Around the world, blockchain assets are gaining momentum. In the United States, companies like Upexi Inc. are staking their claim. Listed on NASDAQ, Upexi holds over 1.9 million Solana tokens, worth more than $120 million, making it the largest publicly traded Solana holder. The company stakes those tokens, earning $7 million a year in passive income. To Traoré, this is more than a curiosity. It's proof that digital assets could become a key part of Africa's new financial ecosystem. The United States is not blind to the threat. Trump has already threatened 100% tariffs on countries that abandon the dollar. Such moves could hit African economies hard. But Traoré says the price of freedom is worth paying. We cannot be afraid of short-term pain, he told supporters. Our children deserve long-term strength. By weaving CIPS into African trade and settling in yuan, he believes the continent can weather Washington's pressure and emerge stronger. The timing is on Africa's side. With its young population, vast resources, and expanding economies, the continent is poised to become a major power. China is laying the groundwork, investing in infrastructure, agriculture, and technology, while Traoré drives the political. will to seize the moment. From Burkina Faso's newly nationalized gold mines to Angola's diversified farmlands. The story is the same. Africa is reclaiming control. In Traoré's mind, the vision is crystal clear. Africa will be a leader in the new global order, not a follower. This transformation won't just shape African lives, it will reshape global trade, currency flows, and the balance of power. Investors are already watching Africa's rise, from its resource wealth to its emerging role in crypto markets. For the rest of the world, it's a wake-up call. Africa is no longer a passive player. It's becoming the arena where the future financial system is built.